Hello, I hope you're having an amazing day. Welcome to the Black Hot Fire Network news update. I hope you're having yourself an amazing day. We are going to be looking at what has been happening throughout Kenya and Africa, looking at all the corners of Africa, keeping you on the know on what has been happening all over Africa. And we are going to start with some news that this is Dimore, and this is the Black Hot Fire news update. We are going to start with some news that I've been reporting on for the past couple of days. News of Raila Odinga, the Kenyan opposition leader, deciding to vie for the AU chairmanship. That is the African Union chairmanship. The African Union chairman is also the CEO of the African Union. He's supposed to be the one in charge of the African Union, which is allegedly supposed to be in charge of Africa, in charge of African affairs. And he said in his manifesto that he wants to make sure his main agenda will be to stop the brain drain that has been happening with many Africans migrating from Kenya and going from Africa and going abroad, leaving Africa with little manpower. So that was what he said is his first agenda. Anyway, that was not the news of the day. So it has emerged that President William Ruto has set up a campaign machinery to help Raila win the AU chairmanship. Raila is also getting support from the former Nigerian president and many other leaders from Africa. And he is banking on the fact that there's never been an AU chairman, an AU leader from East Africa. So that is what he has been banking on. That is what he's hoping will help him win the election. The fact that there's never been any other leader, AU leader from East Africa. So he's hoping he will be the first.
It has now emerged that President William Ruto has assembled a campaign machinery to pitch for the candidature of Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party leader Raila Odinga eyeing the continental boss job. The committee, financed through the Exchequer, has membership withdrawn from government and now set to rope in opposition nominees after Odinga accepted the endorsement to run for the African Union Commission post set for February 2025. NTV has established that Odinga had also done his groundwork across the continent before publicly declaring his interest. NTV's Vinci Group.
Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leaders led by Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka have rallied behind Raila Odinga's bid for the top job of African Union Commission.
We fully support his decision and we shall back his candidature to our fullest capacity.
This even as it emerged that Odinga had remained secretive on his decision that even kept President William Ruto guessing. It is said that it is after Odinga engaged in lobbying across Africa and confirming where President Ruto had lobbied for him is when he decided to publicly announce his interest. All along, President Ruto had set up a team, largely including members from the cabinet, to do Odinga's bidding. Odinga's team is reported to be made up of members largely from the Azimio Executive Council. The state is reported to have committed to fund Odinga's shuttle diplomacy to seek support across Africa.
Mr. Odinga has played a crucial and selfless role in the democratization of our nation. His sacrifices towards achieving socio-economic development, inclusivity, and stability of our republic are well documented.
Hii nafasi Kenya imepata ni nafasi ya maana sana kwa area ya kiuchumi, kwa area ya mambo ya kijamii na kwa mambo ya siasa katika nchi zetu za Kiafrika.
If Odinga wins the seat, it will likely slow down his local political activities and force him to tone down on his criticism against the Kenya Kwanza administration, since the position requires him to have a good working relationship with presidents in Africa, including President Ruto.
Azimio remains focused and united on issues close to the people, and we give assurance of our commitment to always address their concerns.
President Ruto is expected in Addis Ababa this weekend for the African heads of state and government, where the agenda will include the chairmanship for AU Commission. Vincent Omoro.
So that is what has been happening with Raila Odinga, the opposition, the Kenyan opposition leader, deciding to vie for the AU chairmanship job. He has decided to vie for the AU chairmanship job, and we are going to follow on that development. The voting will be happening soon. The selection will be happening soon. That is because the current AU chairman will retire, and now they are looking for a new AU chairman. So we are going to report more on that as it develops. I'm talking of Addis Ababa. They launched, but I'm going to report on that later, on how they launched Mwalimu Julius Nyerere's statue in Addis Ababa. Anyway, let us finish with Kenya first, where the government has announced that the high temperatures, if you've been feeling the high temperatures that has been in Nairobi, the Kenya Meteorological Department has urged Kenyans to brace for high average temperatures during the day across most parts of the country, beginning Tuesday. A forecast for February 20th to February 26th projects temperatures of over 30 degrees Celsius in Turkana, Samburu, Marsabit, Mandera, Wajir, Isiolo, Garissa, and Tana River counties. Lamu, Kilifi, Mombasa, Kwale, Taita Taveta, Kajiado, Makueni, Kitui, Machakos, Nairobi, Kiambu, Laikipia, and Baringo will also see average maximum temperatures of over 30 degrees Celsius. Only sections of Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Murang'a, Nyeri, Nyandarua, Nakuru, Elgeyo Marakwet, and West Pokot are expected to experience average maximum temperatures of below 25 degrees Celsius. Kenya has been experiencing increased daytime and nighttime temperatures as the heavy rainfall that was recorded from late last year, when the region was experiencing the El Nino phenomenon, has subsided. The World Meteorological Organization, WMO, last week announced that the world had the warmest January on record this year. In a record released on Feb 15th, WMO said sea surface temperature have been a record high for 10 consecutive months. It was 0.70 degrees Celsius above the 1991 to 2020 average for January, and 0.12 degrees Celsius above the temperature of the previous warmest January in 2020. That was according to the UN Meteorological Agency. So that is what has been happening with the high temperatures you have been experiencing in Nairobi. So in case you're wondering why the high temperatures have been there in Nairobi above 30 degrees Celsius, then this is the reason.
Over the past few days, Kenya has been characterized by sunny, hot, and dry conditions, save for the recent light rainfall in some parts of the country. A few days, Kenya has been characterized by sunny, hot, and dry conditions, save for the recent light rainfall in some parts of the country. Now, the Kenya Meteorological Department says the extreme hot temperatures experienced both during the day and night are as a result of equinox, a time when the sun crosses the equator. This occurs around the 20th of March. However, climate change and global warming have also contributed to the erratic weather patterns. This story was produced by Ben Kilobe. For the last 7 days or so, Kenyans have been complaining about unusually hot temperatures, both during the day and night, causing restless nights.
Temperature at the day is not as high as when those clouds
The Kenya Meteorological Department has attributed the excessive heat to a number of atmospheric factors, among them equinox, a period when the sun crosses the equator from south to north. Kenya is one of the 13 countries that the equator passes through. During this time, the sun is exactly overhead at a point on the equatorial line.
Kuna kitu ingine huwa tunasema sasa equinox, na hiyo pia nayo ni kitu ya kwanza, very important. So hiyo kama imekaribia equator na sisi tuko equator, so ikipita tuseme kama siku ngapi, siku tatu.
In Senegal, 15 out of 20 presidential.
Sasa jua ipite sehemu hizi ya Kenya.
The weatherman adding that the rapid increase in the water moisture content in the atmosphere is also contributing to the excessively hot temperatures Kenyans are experiencing.
This is actually being attributed to the atmospheric condition, which have already changed so fast. These are the conditions which normally just control the weather, and the weather that we observe and the weather that we predict. These are the things like the distribution of the moisture content, that is the water vapor in the atmosphere. So it is actually increase coming or emanating from the west and moving towards the east.
But unlike equinoxes of the past, this year's has been unusually hot because of climate change and global warming.
What we are observing as per now is evidence of what is going on there. Yes, in terms of the global warming, the temperatures have started going up, a radical change in the weather patterns. Weather patterns seem to do with maybe the rainfall that we used to have high amounts during April. It's no longer in April. That's changed. The temperatures that we used to get probably maybe cold, it has now gone up.
Over the past days, temperatures in Nairobi have shot up to 32 degrees Celsius, up from the normal 25 degrees. In Lodwar and Kitui, temperatures have been hitting 40 and 32.1 degrees Celsius, respectively.
Yeah, I sleep without a blanket now because it's too hot. Sleep with like less clothes, maybe like it's only t-shirt or something.
Huwa ina hit sana, so napata lazima msee ujishikishe ice cream kama maji ndo ujikul.
Hapo kitambo jua ilikuwa inaanza kama saa 5 ya mchana na usiku unakuwa kuna baridi ni vizuri, lakini sasa hii mambo yamebadilika, joto limezidi sana.
When you have a change in only 1 degree centigrade, you have a component of you feel that it's so hot, beside the things that I have already mentioned, which is actually heating or increasing the temperature that you are feeling.
However, the weatherman says Kenyans have no reason to worry, as the predicted heavy rainfall is expected from the 4th week of March, with the peak expected during the month of May.
So that is what has been happening. That is the reason you've been experiencing high temperatures, according to the weatherman. The weatherman is saying it is because of equinox, and of course also because of the global warming and climate change. That is according to the Kenya Meteorological Department. They also project that temperatures are going to rise further, and you are going to have temperatures of about 30 degrees Celsius between now and February 26th in the counties that I mentioned. So if you are watching, if you're going to watch this from you're going to watch this from the counties that I mentioned, including Turkana, Samburu, Marsabit, Mandera, Wajir, Isiolo, Garissa, and Tana River. Other counties include Mombasa, Kwale, Taita Taveta, Makueni, Kajiado, where we are, Kitui, Machakos, Nairobi, and Kiambu, Laikipia, and Baringo. If you are in those counties, expect temperatures of over 30 degrees Celsius. So remember to stay hydrated, remember to drink lots of water, and remember to stay in areas that have enough aeration. The only sections that will not experience high temperatures are those of you who are listening or watching from Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Murang'a, Nyeri, Nyandarua, Nakuru, Marakwet, Trans Nzoia, West Pokot, and Murang'a. Those are the ones that are going to experience temperatures of below 25 degrees Celsius. So if you're watching from any of those areas, then you don't need to worry about the heat wave that people have been talking about, because it's not going to affect you. In other news, the government of Kenya has rolled out the Finya Computer Itoe Dollar training program. For those who don't know, for those of you who are watching or who are going to watch that do not understand Swahili, Finya Computer Itoe Dollar means press the computer, it will give you dollars. So that was that program that President Ruto launched, that he said that young people need to venture into the online space to earn. And he said that the government is not going to provide jobs. You have to Finya Computer means press the computer and it is going to give you dollars. So yesterday, the government rolled out the Finya Computer Itoe Dollar training program. The government, through the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, has welcomed Kenyans aged 18 to 35 to enroll for a free training program dubbed Finya Computer Itoe Dollar. Through a poster shared on X, the ministry announced that the program will teach free courses covering data entry, digital marketing, virtual assistant, and artificial intelligence for graphic design. The 4-day training program is set to start on March 4th, to March 8th, 2024, and will run from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that is the government trying to create employment opportunity to the youth, and it is trying to do so using the online space. So I don't know what you think about this. I don't know if you think this is a good thing. You can talk to me. That is our question of the day. Do you think the Kenyan government rolling out the digital earning program, the digital training program to help young people earn from the internet, the computers, the internet space, do you think it's a good thing, or is the government running away from its responsibility of creating employment for young people? I want you to tell me what you think about that. That is our discussion of the day. That is our question of the day. Because the government, through the Ministry of Labor, welcomed Kenyans aged 18 to 35 years to enroll for a free training program, which it dubbed Finya Computer $1. So among the courses that are going to be taught in the program that will run from the 4th to the 8th of March is data entry, digital marketing, virtual assistance, and graphic design. So I want you to tell me what you think about that as we head into the next thing that has been happening today. On the last piece of news from Kenya, the Affordable Housing Bill has sailed through after the second reading after 141 MPs supported it and 58 opposed it. President William Ruto's pet project of affordable housing on Tuesday moved a step closer from being realized after it sailed through the second reading in the National Assembly. Kenya Kwanza leaning MPs toed the line and followed the command by President Ruto and voted for the bill to sail through. Efforts by opposition MPs to thwart the passage of the bill failed as the government side carried the day, getting 141 votes against 58. There were pleas from Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi to delay the debate of the bill at the third reading stage, but they were not successful as the Speaker ruled out that the debate will go on as scheduled on Wednesday afternoon. And the request was opposed by Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, who asked the Speaker to allow for members to propose amendments and insisted that the bill should not be delayed. The debate must come tomorrow. That was what Kimani Ichung'wah said. Several amendments have been proposed to the bill, including the scrapping of the 10% deposit that one is required to own a house. And all eyes are now on the government to see whether those amendments are going to be amended. But one thing is clear, Ruto's housing project is going to pass. It has passed the third reading, and it is now goes to the next stage. So for those of you who are not from Kenya and who do not understand what the housing project is, this is a project that the President William Ruto introduced. So in the project, all Kenyans who are working will be deducted a certain amount in their salary, and the amount deducted will go towards building houses. So it is a housing project, but it is being financed by the people. So everybody who is employed is getting deducted a certain amount from their salary, and it is going into the housing project. And for you to get the house, you have to pay a 10% deposit, and then you're going to pay the house as a mortgage. You're going to pay, you're not being given the house for free. You're going to be paying rent for the house, and as you pay your debt, your debt for the house reduces. So that is what has been happening on the housing project, and this comes days after the president urged MPs to pass the bill. He said this as he was speaking in Meru, and he said that whatever comes, the housing project was going to pass. He actually labeled it his key project and his pet project. The reason for the project, he said, was to create employments for young people and to end the housing problem that Kenya has been experiencing. However, critics have come out, many leaders have come out and asked the president to stop focusing on houses, since Kenya does not have a housing problem, but rather an income problem. Many people are asking him to stop focusing more on housing and focus more on creating income for the people, creating more job opportunities, which he answered and said that the housing projects are going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs for young people who are going to work in the construction sites.
his Mount Kenya tour that has seen him traverse Kiambu, Murang'a, and Nyeri counties. The president calling on members of parliament to enact legislation that will enable him collect taxes to fund his affordable housing project that he says has employed up to 130,000 people so far. In the same tour, his deputy Rigathi Gachagua called for unity in the Mount Kenya region behind his boss and dismissed calls to have a regional party as it forms the largest shareholders in the ruling party.
Sisi tunafanya na bidii. Hata ile mambo ilikuwa imetusumbua ya uchumi. Sisi tumejifunza kutoka muungwana anatoka hapa Nyeri anaitwa Mwai Kibaki. Yeye ndiye alituambia nchi haijengwi na madeni. Nchi inajengwa na kodi. Hivyo ndio Kibaki alituambia. Ninyi mnanielewa? Mnataka tuendelee hiyo?
So a little translation for those of you who are watching and who do not understand Swahili. I'm going to help you with translation of what the president is saying in this video. So the president is saying that he learned from the former president Mwai Kibaki that a country is not built by debts but rather by taxes. That is what he said, and therefore he's saying that he is not going to take more debts and he's going to tax Kenyans. He's going to, in his words, Kenya is going to live within its means. That is not relying on debts anymore, but rather relying on its own self-sufficiency. He was saying this in response to opposition MPs who had asked him to take a loan and finance the housing project from a loan or from any other source of funding rather than taxing the people to support his affordable housing project. So he was saying this in answer to the MPs. So he's saying that what he learned from the former president Mwai Kibaki, who is reportedly, allegedly one of the best presidents Kenya has ever had because he left the economy a bit stable. So what he's saying is that he learned that a country does not grow from debts, but rather from self-sufficiency, from living within its means.
Sisi tumetoka mambo ya ukabila na hatutaki mtu kusema tuunde ati chama yetu hapa Mount Kenya. Chama ya UDA mimi ndio naibu wa party leader. Na sisi watu ya Mlima shareholding yetu katika chama ya UDA is the largest and that is our party under the President William Ruto. Tumekubaliana. Kwa hivyo sisi tutaka kwa hiyo chama nyuma ya huyu rais tupelekane naye vizuri, tumsaidie, tumuombee ndio afaulu.
So that was the deputy. That was the deputy president Rigathi Gachagua saying nothing. He basically was just talking politics, talking about having a political party that is not tribal. But that was not the news. The news was that the president had urged opposition MPs and all MPs to pass his housing bill. And today, this was what happened in the Kenyan parliament. So this video is courtesy of Daily News.
Move forward and announce the results to the speaker.
Honorable Speaker, sir, in the second reading of the Affordable Housing Bill 2023, the 14 manual for ayes 141, nays 58.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. I now wish to announce the result of the voting in the House. Order. In addition on second reading of the Affordable Housing Bill 2023, the results are as follows. The ayes 141, the noes 58, total votes 199, abstentions nil, so the ayes have it. But can you read? Order, Wanjala. Order, before you read that. Order.
So that was how the Finance Bill 2022 passed, and now it heads to the next stage. And all we can do now is wait and see whether it is going to work, because Kenyans are already getting deducted money from their payslips, and the housing projects are already underway. We have seen a few of them completed already and handed over to the people of Kenya. So we are going to see whether it is going to work or whether it is going to be just another Ponzi scheme. Anyway, let us now head out of Kenya and let us head to Guinea, where Guinea's ruling National Council has dissolved the interim government in the West African nation. Guinea's ruling National Council of the Rally for Development, that is the CRND, dissolved the interim government yesterday. A decree was read on state television on Monday by the presidency's Secretary General, who was surrounded by other military officers and several armed and masked soldiers. The decree provides that the directors of cabinet, secretary generals, and their deputies will be in charge until a new government is formed. Amara Kamara, Amara Kamara is the presidency's secretary general. So he said he did not say when a new administration would be appointed. All he did was disband the previous government, the current government. Ibrahima Sori Bangura, the chief of staff of the armed forces, said in a communication dated Monday that members of the dissolved government had to return their vehicles and passports as soon as possible, and their bodyguards also had to end their services, and the minister's bank accounts were frozen. The government was in office since July 2022. The military junta is headed by General Mamadi Domboya, and it took power by force in September 2021. Under pressure, the then colonel agreed with ECOWAS to end a transition by late 2024. So that is what has been happening in Guinea, with the government that was there being disbanded by the military junta.
Guinea's ruling National Council of the Rally for Development, CRND, has dissolved the interim government in the West African nation. The decree was read on state television on Monday by the presidency's Secretary General. The decree provides that cabinet directors, secretary generals, and their deputies will be in charge until a new government is formed. The presidency's Secretary General, Amara Kamara, didn't say when a new administration would be appointed, though. The government had been in office since July 2022. Guinea's military junta is headed by General Mamadi Doumbouya, who took power by force in September 2021. Under pressure, the then colonel agreed with ECOWAS and returned to civilian rule by the end of 2024.
Yeah, so that is what has been happening in Guinea. And let us now head to Senegal, where in Senegal, 15 out of the 20 candidates approved to contest in the delayed presidential election, and they united in a call for the vote to be conducted, and they said the vote should be conducted no later than April 2nd, coinciding with the end of President Macky Sall's term. These candidates, including notable figures like Bassirou Diomaye Faye, the former Dakar mayor, Khalifa Sall, emphasized the importance of adhering to the electoral schedule and insisted that the candidate list should remain unchanged. President Sall's proposal to postpone the elections for several months, that was until December, to resolve disputes over candidates' eligibility, faced a setback when the country's highest court deemed the delay unconstitutional. In response, Sals expressed his commitment to organizing the elections as soon as possible, and amidst these developments, protests have erupted in Dakar again, with demonstrators urging President Sall to expedite the electoral process. Hundreds of people took to the streets, chanting slogans against Sall's perceived authoritarian tendencies and demanding the release of imprisoned opposition figures. The postponement of the presidential election, initially scheduled for February 25th, stirred controversy, leading to clashes between protestants and security forces. The Constitutional Council ruling against the delay underscored the imperative of holding timely and transparent elections to uphold the democratic norms in Senegal. President Sall's denial of accusations regarding intention to prolong his tenure has brought a lot of public dissatisfaction as both local and international pressure mounts for a swift resolution to the political impasse. For example, the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken claimed that he had talked on phone with Sir and urged him to have the elections on time. Bola Tinubu, who is also the chairman of ECOWAS, had a meeting with Sir to discuss the postponement of the election and the number of people who had been killed in Senegal's protest that had erupted after Sir postponed the election that was supposed to happen on Sunday this week to December. Many people feel like Sir is postponing the elections to December because he wants to prolong his tenure in office, but Sir in his defense said that he was postponing the elections to allow for the resolving for the election council to resolve the issues it had with some of the contestants. It had disqualified a few contestants, and Sir said that he thought that this would bring unrest to the country and therefore decided to postpone the elections until December. And so that is what has been happening in Senegal, with all 15 out of the 20 leaders who are to contest for the elections coming out and saying that they are ready for the elections and they should not be postponed, and the elections should not be held anytime later than April, which is the end of Macky Sall's tenure.
In Senegal, 15 out of 20 presidential candidates have banded together, urging the upcoming elections to be held no later than April 2nd, aligning with the end of President Macky Sall's term. This unifying call comes as protests escalate in Dakar, with demonstrators demanding execute. In Senegal, 15 out of 20 presidential candidates have banded together, urging the upcoming elections to be held no later than April 2nd, aligning with the end of President Macky Sall's term. This unifying call comes as protests escalate in Dakar, with demonstrators demanding expedited electoral proceedings. President Sall's proposal to postpone the elections for several months due to disputes over candidate eligibility was met with resistance, culminating in clashes between protesters and security forces. The Constitutional Council's subsequent ruling against the delay has heightened expectations for a prompt resolution for the electoral impasse. President Sall's denial of accusations regarding intention to prolong his tenure has not quelled public dissatisfaction, as both local and international pressure mount for a swift resolution to the political impasse. The U.S. Bureau of African Affairs, in a statement on social media, applauded the Constitutional Council's decision, emphasizing the importance of restoring Senegal's democratic trajectory through a timely electoral process.
So that is what has been happening in Senegal after Macky Sall postponed the election. And it is important to note that several people have died in the Senegal protests that erupted after the postponement. Several people have died. And the government at one point shut down the internet for the whole country as a way of preventing people from mobilizing each other to go and protest. So we are going to follow up on Senegal and what is happening in Senegal, and we are going to report more on the development that will happen. Is Macky Sall going to back down and allow the elections to be held before December, as he had said, with the parliament backing him? The parliament eventually backed his move and said the election should be postponed, but the court went ahead and said that the postponement of the election was unconstitutional. So whether Macky Sall will back down and allow the elections to be held is yet to be seen, but we are going to follow on that development. Let us now head to Tunisia, where Tunisian opposition leader Rached Ghannouchi went on a hunger strike on Monday in solidarity with other anti-government figures waging a protest fast. The imprisoned Ghannouchi, a fierce critic of President Kais Saied and head of the Ennahda main opposition party, was jailed last year on charges of incitement against police and plotting against state security. The 82-year-old was also sentenced earlier this month to 3 years in prison in a separate case on charges of accepting external financing. His lawyer said in a statement that was quoted in the press as, while he is fighting the empty stomach battle, Gonanuchi calls on Tunisians to adhere to a democratic Tunisia that includes everyone on the basis of freedom and the independence of the judiciary. At least 6 opposition leaders arrested in a 2023 crackdown began an open-ended hunger strike last week to protest at their imprisonment without trial and demand their immediate release from prison. So that is what has been happening in Tunisia, with opposition leader Gonanuchi, who is a fierce critique of the Tunisian president Kais Saied, going on a hunger strike together with other leaders. The 82-year-old was sentenced earlier this month to 3 years in prison, and he's also facing, so the 3 years in prison was in charges. The charges was accepting external financing, and he's also facing charges of incitement. The other opposition leaders also in prison without trial. So that is why they are protesting. And we're going to follow up on these two, on what is happening in Tunisia, and we're going to see whether this hunger strike by Bononucci is going to result into anything, and whether President Said will release the opposition leaders that he imprisoned in a 2023 crackdown. Let us now head to Nigeria, where Nigerians are protesting over the high cost of living. Today, large crowds marched through the center of Ibadan in the country's west. According to government statistics, the inflation rate in January rose to 29.9%, its highest since 1996, mainly being driven by food and non-alcoholic beverages. The people are quoted saying that the country is bleeding and life is hard, and now the people are angry and suffering. One of them said in an interview that nobody can afford 3 square meals or even 2 square meals a day. Nigerians are facing Nigeria is facing one of the West African nation's worst economic crisis in as many years, triggered by a surging inflation rate which followed monetary policies that have dipped the local currency to an all-time low against the dollar, provoking anger and protest across the country. This came after Bola Tinubu launched reforms last year that saw the removal of gas subsidies, and this eroded incomes and savings while squeezing millions of already struggling people with hardship, a situation that has worsened from the plummeting currency in Nigeria. So Nigeria is having the opposite of what is happening in Kenya. With the Kenyan currency gaining, the Nigeria's currency is losing, and that was why today the people of Nigeria were out in the streets to protest against the high cost of living. The latest government statistics released on Thursday showed that the inflation rate in January rose to 29.9%. That is its highest rate since 1996. The Naira itself further went down to 1,524 Nairas for $1. That is 1,524 Nairas for $1 is the exchange rate in Nigeria right now. That reflects a 230% loss of value in the last 1 year. It worsens an already bad situation, with Nigeria going through a tough economic time and also facing a lot of insecurities with Boko Haram. Nigeria's GDP is driven mainly by the service sector, such as the information technology and banking, followed by the industry sector, including manufacturing and processing, and then agriculture. So that is what has been happening in Nigeria and in Lagos. And the challenge is that the economy is far from sufficient for Nigeria's booming population, which relies heavily on imports to meet its daily needs. So with the Nigerian Naira going down and the country relying on imports, then it is easily affected, because the economy is in itself is heavily dependent on imports. The economy is also dependent on crude. So when the crude oil prices went down in 2014, the authorities continued to use foreign reserves to stabilize the Naira amid multiple exchange rates. The country continued to subsidize fuel using scarce external reserves, while shutting down the borders in a push for self-sufficiency and limiting access to the dollar in the official market for importers of certain items. As a result, food prices were rising as a parallel market for the US dollar boomed. Shortly after taking the reins of power, President Bola Tinubu took the bold steps to fix the ailing economy and attract investors. He announced the end of costly decades of long gas subsidies, which the government said were no longer sustainable, while the country's multiple exchange rates were unified to allow market forces to determine the rate of local naira exchange against the dollar, which in effect devalued the currency. However, analysts are saying that there were no adequate measures to provide alternatives for citizens, and the government does not seem to know what it is doing. President Tinubu himself has directed the release of food items such as cereals from government reserves, among other measures to help cushion the effect of the economic hardship in Nigeria. The government has also said that it has plans to set up a commodity board to help regulate the soaring prices of goods and services. It's far worse for some in conflict zones in northern Nigeria, where farming communities are no longer able to cultivate what they eat as they are forced to flee violence. That is why pockets of protests today and on Monday broke out in Lagos and other cities, but security forces have been quick to quiet them down, even making arrests in some cases. So that is what has been happening in Nigeria, with the Nigerian naira going down in value in comparison to the US dollar, which is going to affect Nigeria's economy because Nigeria heavily relies on imports. So this is the opposite of what is happening in Kenya, with the Kenyan shilling gaining heavily against the dollar. At some point last week, the Kenyan shilling was trading at 138 shillings. That is the highest it has traded since 2011, and it gained its highest single day gain in the last 12 years. So the Kenyan shilling has been doing really well, and we hope it is going to continue doing like that, because Kenya is also another country that relies heavily on imports, and therefore once the Kenyan shilling starts gaining against the US dollar, then what that means is the cost of living will go down a little bit. The prices of electronics, the prices of food, the prices of everything will go down because they are heavily reliant on the US dollar, which is used to facilitate for the imports. And lastly, let us head to Addis Ababa, where Nyerere, former Tanzania president, who is the founding father, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, was honored by a new statue in Addis Ababa. So Tanzania's founding father, Julius Nyerere, has been honored with a new statue outside the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. Nyerere led what is now Tanzania from independence in 1961 to 1985. So apparently Tanzania and Zanzibar were different countries, but in 1963, Tanzania united with the archipelago, the Zanzibar archipelago, and formed what is now Tanzania. Known as Mwalimu, which is Swahili for teacher, he was a Pan-African allegedly, and hosted independence fighters opposed to white minority rule in Southern Africa. He said to have played a key role in creation of the Organization of African Unity, that is the OAU, which later transformed to the AU, and unveiling the statue at a ceremony attended by numerous African leaders of states, including William Ruto, was AU's commission leader Musa Faki Mahamat, who is, by the way, retiring. That is why the opposition leader of Kenya, Raila Odinga, is vying for the AU chairmanship, because the current AU commission leader Musa Faki Mahamat is retiring next year. So that is what has been happening throughout Africa. Throughout the whole of Africa, from Ethiopia to Senegal to Guinea to Kenya. You're now up to date on what has been happening throughout Africa today. And I'll see you tomorrow on to Bonge, and later on the news update at 7 to tell you what will be happening in Africa tomorrow. So I hope you enjoyed the rest of your night for those in Kenya, and the rest of your day for those of you watching from abroad, and for those of you who will watch this episode later. Coming up next is Kamlesh and Joby. Make sure to join them. So enjoy the rest of your day, your night. It's been a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen.